What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Knicks Latest, your go-to YouTube channel for the latest in Knicks news, headlines, rumors, all that good stuff. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you like. Make sure you drop a comment. We're trying to develop a fan base of New York Knicks fans who want to talk New York Knicks, who want to argue New York Knicks, who want to debate New York Knicks, but who all love the New York Knicks and just want to see them succeed. It is the most anticipated New York Knicks season in the past 25 years. This is a season where we can actually win an NBA championship. This is a season where I am expecting the New York Knicks to win the Eastern Conference. So buckle up. Let's get started. We have YouTube comments on the back end. I told you guys that I would like to take your comments and use them on the show. Got 2 comments today. But first, I want to hit on something from James Edwards of The Athletic. He wrote an article talking about the Knicks starting lineup and how there could be a change in the starting lineup. We all know what that means. Last year, Josh Hart was starting during the playoffs. They made the adjustment, put Mitchell Robinson in for Josh Hart. The reality of the situation was that the Josh Hart starting lineup didn't do well offensively. There seemed to be a little bit of a lack of chemistry or just kind of like some sort of, I don't know, just offensively it didn't work well because what teams would do is they would put the big man on Josh Hart, have him sag in the paint. They would leave, that would leave the paint all cluttered. Karl-Anthony Towns can get a small guy on him, which takes away his ability to kind of, shoot the 3 ball, so the Knicks would be more tempted to go inside. It just didn't work out. The lineup of Jalen, Josh, OG, Mikal, and Cat didn't really work out in the long run, even though I got off to a historic start. But once defenses made the adjustments, Tom Thibodeau never made the adjustment back. That lineup did not do well in the playoffs. They went with the Mitchell Robinson starting lineup, which did okay, but Tom Thibodeau still ran Josh Hart out there 30 minutes playing with that original starting 5 lineup. And this article talks about how maybe that should change and how Mitchell Robinson should be inserted into the lineup, but no one knows what's going to happen here. Now, this has been a debate between Knicks fans since the playoffs last year. Most Knicks fans I know side with the fact of changing up the starting lineup, adding Mitchell Robinson in. I think that would obviously bolster the defense there. You have Mitchell Robinson at the 5, guarding the rim, protecting the rim. Karl-Anthony Towns at the 4 can now move out, play the perimeter on offense as well. He doesn't have to, pack the paint. He doesn't have to be the big guy underneath the rim. You can be more versatile on offense with Karl-Anthony Towns offensively. I would like to see more pick and rolls with Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns. That was something that I was looking forward to last year. When they got Cat, you thought a big reason why they did that was so they can, spread the floor and, shoot more threes and play more 5 wide. And it seemed like they were doing that at first. But then again, when you have Josh Hart out there and he's someone who's reluctant to shoot the 3 ball and teams are content with him shooting the 3, you can sag, you can drop into the paint, and that just foiled all the plans the Knicks had as far as the 5 wide, and Thibodeau never really adjusted properly. I do like the idea of Karl playing the 4, but you would still kind of have that problem with Mitch at the 5-2 offensively. So I would wonder what Mike Brown would do, to kind of rectify that. Mitch is a center, so a center playing in the paint and having his defender in the paint isn't as detrimental as someone like Josh Hart who's on the perimeter and their defender is in the paint. It's different. But I do think I would prefer the Mitchell Robinson lineup better just because defensively he can make up for a lot of mistakes that Karl-Anthony Towns will make. For Jalen Brunson not being the best point of attack defender at the point guard position, that's the biggest weakness for the Knicks when it comes to high-level competitive basketball. When we get to the Eastern Conference Finals, when we get to the NBA Finals, hopefully, that's going to be what teams try to pick on when it comes to the New York Knicks, picking on Jalen Brunson, picking on Karl-Anthony Towns, and seeing if they can exploit those two on the defensive end. Mitchell Robinson can cover up a lot. You give up a lot offensively, but you do have him protecting the rim and also switching on the perimeter, in the pick and pop situation, pick and roll situation, whatever it is, with Mitchell Robinson that I feel very comfortable with. Some other people actually also said they would start Deuce McBride, which I've seen here and there. You take out Josh Hart, you leave Mitch on the bench, he's still your backup 5, and you throw Deuce in there because now you can do 5 wide. I'm not too big of a fan of that. Deuce is a very good point of attack defender, but if you're going to put him on, let's just say, the point guard of the opposing team, you got to put Jalen somewhere. And if Deuce is guarding the point guard or the ball handler, well, who's Jalen guarding? Like, you can't hide Jalen forever. And now you got two really short guys out there. You're not as big, you're not as tall. I think that would cause more problems defensively than Knicks fans would think. I think it's an interesting lineup to have, during some parts in the game, maybe in the second half or in the first half. When Deuce comes off the bench, maybe you bring back Jalen a little early and play them together. Who knows? But to start the game and to have that be your starting lineup, maybe your closing lineup, doesn't really make too much sense to me. I like Deuce off the bench better. And that leads me to a YouTube comment, because last episode I was talking about Deuce McBride, and I was talking about how, right now, getting Jordan Clarkson, there's some speculation out there that Deuce McBride could be a trade option for the New York Knicks at the trade deadline. And I said, I don't really like that idea. I like Deuce McBride. I want to see him stay in the New York Knicks uniform. I think he fits the roster pretty well. I like his role to come off the bench, shoot threes. Your best point of attack defender off the bench, at least, of that unit to guard whoever comes off the bench on the opposing team. And Patrick here made this comment, there's so many Deuce McBrides out there, which I found interesting because I don't think it's false, Patrick. I think you're right in a lot of ways, but I don't think necessarily they have the contract that Deuce has. Deuce signed, a bargain deal with the Knicks for the next 2 years. And I don't think, he fits the roster. I don't think you can get someone who fits the roster just as well. You can get, a small guard who can shoot the three. I know you can find that. I'm not saying you can't find that, but Deuce is also a very vicious point of attack defender. Like, you can find a lot of Deuce McBrides on the offensive end and what he brings on the defensive end, but there are very few guards who can do both, who can shoot the three at the clip that Deuce can when he's hot, and who can guard the way Deuce can, who also has played with this team for 3 years now, who is used to New York, who can perform in New York. I don't think him and Jordan Clarkson clash. I don't think that's going to be a problem. Deuce can play off the ball when Jordan needs the ball in his hands. He's perfectly fine doing that. I don't think Deuce ever felt the pressure to play backup point guard. I don't think that's his role ever. So, I don't think we're going to need him to do that. I think he's perfectly fit right now for the role that he has. And to be honest, like I said last episode too, if there's going to be a trade piece, I do think it's Mitchell Robinson, based off the fact he's due a contract extension, and I think the Knicks can get more. I'm not saying Mitch isn't as valuable. I mean, obviously, we're talking about putting him in the starting lineup. He changes the dynamics of the defense tremendously. It's not about who's better or more who's valuable, but I do think Mitch is a little more replaceable, because I don't know if I can say the same exact thing. There's so many Mitchell Robinsons out there, but you can get rim protectors. We talked about Walker Kessler on the show. He's somebody who can be comparable to Mitchell Robinson on the defensive end, not as good defensively, especially on the perimeter, but someone who's better offensively. So I do think there are replacements for Mitchell Robinson. I think you can get more from Mitchell Robinson. I think he's more valuable than a Deuce McBride. And I do think, the Knicks could use a little bit of a shake-up at that position too as well. I would like it if we can have something where we don't really have to sacrifice offense for defense or defense for offense depending on, who's in the game. And that leads me to this next comment from Elliot Schwartz. He says, still think the Knicks should sign an all-around center. And I agree. I think that would be great. The problem is I don't know who that is. The closest thing right now is a Thomas Bryant, who can step out and shoot the three. He hasn't been signed yet. Had a pretty successful run with the Indiana Pacers last year after getting traded. But defensively, he's nowhere near Mitchell Robinson. Not even close. So even getting like a Thomas Bryant, if Cat comes out the game, you throw in Thomas Bryant, yeah, you still have someone who can stretch the floor. He's not as great a shooter as Cat is, obviously, but he can still stretch the floor. But your defense is still going to be lacking. And then you don't have a Mitchell Robinson on top of that to kind of, clean up the back end. A lot of this also depends on Ariel Hukporti and his development. Can he stay on the floor without fouling? He's obviously very athletic, a lot of raw talent, still kind of a project. Better offensively than Mitch. I think he has a higher ceiling offensively than Mitch as well. So maybe Ariel Hukporti turns into someone who is a formidable defender, and that makes Mitch expendable. But we'll see. I do agree with this, though, Elliot. I do think the Knicks should have an all-around center or somebody who can step out and shoot the three, or at least spread the floor or be an offensive threat. Because right now you have Karl Anthony Towns, who I would rather have on the perimeter play the four. And our fives right now are Mitchell Robinson and Hukporti, and those are two options that offensively I'm not too comfortable with. And Mitch, he brings a lot of value, but he brings value defensively. It would be nice to have a five who can stretch the floor, who can pass the basketball, who can shoot a little bit. I know I don't want to make Knicks fans sad here, but like an Isaiah Hartenstein, who can at least have a floater, protect the rim, is a hub at the top of the key, a good passer. This Knicks team really misses Isaiah Hartenstein, and that's a player that doesn't grow on trees. Someone who can handle the rock, pass the ball, get rebounds, block shots. The Knicks really miss Isaiah. Once Isaiah left his team, I think, there was this big hole that the Knicks are still trying to fill, if I'm being honest with you. So, Elliot, let me know who you are thinking about in the comments if you're watching this video. If you're also watching this video, let me know what you think about Deuce McBride, maybe going into the starting lineup, or, if you think he's expendable. Let me know what you think about the starting lineup proposition. Do you think Mitchell Robinson should be starting instead of Josh Hart? Would you rather Josh Hart starting? Would you want to see him get a chance with Mike Brown and see what Mike Brown can do? Or would you like Josh Hart to the bench? I think Josh is best served off the bench. I don't mind Josh getting big minutes. I just don't know if he's perfect for that lineup, for that starting five right now. And I do think that maybe moving him to the bench and having him run with the unit where he can be more aggressive and he have more confidence is what best suits him. A six-man Josh Hart's always been my favorite type of Josh Hart. I think that's the best type of Josh Hart. All right, subscribe, drop a comment, like the video. See you tomorrow from the episode of Knicks Latest. Peace.